strategy, I define it as making the right choices. You choose which customers, which segment, which markets you're going into. So what is implementation all about? The right actions.
The challenge we have today is that your implementation cannot fail. Why not? Because of the pressure so many leaders are under today. And the inspiration for myself was that leaders have been taught how to plan, but not how to implement. So we have a plethora of tools, techniques, and frameworks to guide you on how to craft a strategy. And we have moved forward. Leaders do know that implementation is important, but as I open with the book, Implement, knowing what to do and doing it is two different things. And what they're lacking is that same focus, commitment, and tenacity on implementation, and they need the frameworks and the discipline to guide them. So that was the inspiration that drove me to write the book. The most important message is that we need an equal balance between our focus on strategy and our focus on implementation. And to achieve that inside Implement, doing it right in a digital world, I broke the book into two parts. The first part is about developing the implementation mindset and having the discipline, the tenacity, and the passion to follow through on the choices that your organization has made. The second part of the book provides that often missing tools and framework to guide you that so many leaders are missing. So instead of being left on your own to try and roll out the strategy and everyone doing it differently, today more than ever, we need alignment and everyone moving towards the same North Star. And the second part of the book guides you on how to make that happen. It's a great question. Too many leaders are finding that their transformation in this digital world is not going as fast as they anticipated and is more difficult than they expected. And as a result, they're not delivering on that strategy promise. Where's the hurdle? In translating the strategy into the right actions. Strategy is about making the right choices. You choose which markets you're going to play in, which customers you're going to deliver to, what level of expectation you're going to meet. Implementation is then about taking the right actions. Now, we're busy every day, but are we adding value to the organization in what we're doing? And one of the biggest mistakes I see is that when the leaders launch the strategy, they do the big town hall and the PowerPoints and the fanfare, but they don't tell their individual employees what they're expected to perform differently. The role of the leader is to help the employees and guide them and coach them in the way we work today to help them understand what do I need to do differently. And just as the final part of that, strategy by default means working differently. So articulate specifically what are the right actions for your employees. Very easily, because every chapter starts with an implementation story. And the reason for that is I want the book to come alive for the reader. And we learn best through both emotions and the logic. So the story that I use in the opening of the book is when a father is lying on his deathbed in Egypt, and his three sons gather around. And almost with his last few breaths, he says to his oldest son, take half of all my camels. To the middle son, he says, take 1/3 of all my camels. And to the youngest son, he says, take 1/9 of all my, and he passes. And after they pay respects, the sons go out to count the camels. And there are 17. How can they take a half, a third, and a ninth? They can't. And after pondering and thinking and struggling, they eventually go into the village, where a wise woman advises them. And they explain what their last wishes from their father was. And the wise woman, she ponders the question, and she too can't find the answer. She says, all I can do is lend you one of my camels. Now they have 18. The eldest son takes half, which is 9. The middle son takes a third, which is 6. And the youngest son takes a ninth, which is 2. That adds up to 17. They have one camel left over that they give back to the wise woman. So what's the moral of the story? What's this got to do with implementing in a digital world? Implementation is not easy. If it was, 2/3 would not fail. And that figure comes from our own research and other global companies. To succeed in implementation, this is why you need that passion, tenacity, and discipline, because it's not going to happen overnight. And most companies don't just become overnight successes. It takes the follow-through from the leaders to make it happen, and from everyone aligned to deliver on what your company is looking to do. There are plethora of tools when you're crafting strategy, but how many implementation tools and frameworks can you think of? So the focus in Implement, doing it right in a digital world, is to provide you with the tools, the techniques, and the methodologies, as well as the best practices. And you're going to discover, for example, the implementation compass that highlights the 8 areas for excellence in execution. The implementation canvas that will help you identify the right actions, as well as what we call the ticking clock model for traditional companies who are looking to move to becoming digitally driven, as well as many other tools and frameworks embedded in the book. The subtitle of the book, Implement, is doing it right in a digital world. I've been fortunate over the last 10 years to be part of digital transformation. And we all know it shifted and changed the way we work. So what's the number one roadblock to digital transformation? It's not technology, it's the legacy leadership and leaders reluctant to let go of the old way of working. So in the book, I very much focus on helping you understand what style of leadership is required. And to give you an example of that, today we've shifted from what we call vertical management to horizontal management. What's the difference? Well, you know vertical management. That's when you need to keep going up, getting permission, getting sign-offs, getting approvals, getting budget. It's tiring, it's exhausting, it's bureaucratic. When we're horizontal, we flatline the organization. Now, the most important part is it's end-to-end around your customers, whether you're B2B or B2C. That's now irrelevant because data allows you to get, whether structured or unstructured, opening up both B2B and B2C. The second is you must be data-driven. The better the data, the better the decisions. The better the decisions, the better your organization's performance. If you're not data-driven, within the next few years, you're going to be out of business. And the third critical part of horizontal management is empowering your employees. You can no longer have them chasing around, waiting for leaders to come back, to get approvals, to get signatures. Speed is your competitive currency today. So you've got to work fast. So very much shift from a vertical to a horizontal management. Implement is available on all your favorite platforms. And if you would like it in color and assigned, please visit implementationbook.com, which is the landing page where I share with you the insights to the book. You'll also find a quiz to test yourself on implementation, a summary of some of the key takeaways, as well as you can look inside and read the first couple of chapters. I'm very fortunate. My passion is what I live and breathe. which is supporting organizations to implement strategy. So the work that I do, my passion, my commitment, is working with boards and C-suites to help them implement their strategy, to transform from being traditional to digital, to inspire and engage their employees, to make sure the leaders are communicating and that the employees are taking the right actions. So most of my work is around working with clients. I have opportunities to speak with you today in promoting the books, and I speak around the world. Thank you to the introductions that you give me. And also, I write university case studies on implementation. I have 3 new that are coming out with the university in Singapore that will also be available on Harvard. And in between all of that, those who enjoy it, I do my Ironman. So keeps me busy, but I'm very fortunate in living my passion. Just think back to before digital. When we implemented a technology such as SAP, we know that 2 out of 3 could fail. When we tried to change, for example, the culture inside an organization, we also know it was extremely difficult and about 2 out of 3 failed. What is digital transformation? What is implementing in a digital world all about? It's about taking the technology that fails 2/3 of the time and taking the culture that fails 2/3 of the time, putting them in the same pot and expecting a different outcome. It's crazy. This is why implementation is more important than ever, because we need to make sure we succeed. Your implementation cannot fail, and we need to make sure we make it happen. Strategy implementation is failing for a couple of main reasons. The first one is that unbelievably, leaders habitually repeat their past mistakes. They know in the past what they did didn't work. They roll out the new strategy and they repeat the same techniques. So leaders need to think different and employees need to operate differently. Secondly, for the leaders, they've been missing the framework to guide them through the implementation. So they all go off in their different departments and divisions and countries doing it the way they want. And there's never been a more critical time that we need alignment. In implementation, it's not about being uniform, it's about being unified. It's about ensuring that everyone is moving towards the purpose, but not exactly at the same time in the same way, but as long as they're moving all in the same direction. And then when they go back into their business, in the second part of the book, I introduce the implementation compass, which explains the 8 areas that I call for excellence in execution. And these came from 20 years of research and client work and have been tested with governments, multinational, and other companies around the world. And it helps you ensure that your leaders have alignment and that you're all moving in the direction by taking the right actions. Just think, when you're considering rolling out your implementation, how are you going to go about it? Apart from sending out the emails, holding the town hall meeting, and doing some WhatsApp messages, which isn't implementation, we have studied the top performing companies around the world over many years and extracted what do they do differently. From that, we discovered there were 8 areas they focused on. And the 8 areas we put into a model we call the implementation compass. Your strategy is your roadmap. It shows you where you are and where you need to get to. But on your roadmap, you need a compass for your journey. The implementation compass is circular because implementation is not linear. Many things happen simultaneously. And the 8 areas I'll highlight very briefly. You start anywhere, but I'll start at north. It's people. The caliber of your people dictate the caliber of the results. Then you move right to business case. This one might sound a bit different, but you have to explain why your organization is changing and create a sense of urgency. Then we move over to east, which is communication. You've got to ensure that your leaders nurture the communication, not just a one-off. Then we move to measurement. Change your strategy, change your measures. Otherwise, you're measuring the old strategy and getting the old results. Then it's south is culture. What's the role of culture in implementation? Culture drives the way your organization implements. Two companies can have the same strategy, but how they implement it is driven by their culture. And then as we move further around the compass, we get to process. For those older ones in the audience, we used to talk about Six Sigma and lean manufacturing. Today, it's all about innovation. Innovation or eliminate. And it's all about ensuring that your processes are delivering at top levels. Then finishing off, at West, we have reinforcement. When people take the right actions, we've got to understand how to reinforce them. What is the number one motivator of people at work? And it's not cash. What is it? Find out in the book. And finally, you have to review. You can't just once a year go, how's our strategy? You have to constantly review weekly, monthly, quarterly across your people, your department, and the whole company. That's what it takes to successfully deliver world-class implementation. A few years back, we were discovering that many organizations who recognized the importance of transforming to digital were struggling. One of the challenges was, how do all the many moving parts come together? So myself and my business partner, Jeremy, we came together and we now interviewed over 4,000 leaders across 4 continents in over 18 countries. And we asked, what are your challenges? What's working? What's not? What are the best practices? We studied the top performing companies to work out what it takes to succeed. The ticking clock model then guides leaders who work in traditional companies who want to become digitally driven. So inside it, you're going to identify 3 strategic stages. The first part is articulating your digital ambition, which is not what does digital mean to your company, but to your customer. Then you ask, how will that impact your business model? And then the third part of that, then you look at what does it mean internally. And that's only the first strategic question. Then you have to look at your business model and customize around your operations, your customer, and your culture. So we explain how that all comes together. And then the third strategic step is we live in a world today where you must remain future ready. The winds of change blow faster and harder externally than they do internally. Just think how many new technologies are shifting the way you operate. So you must remain future ready. How do you achieve all of that? That's the 11 operational steps that make up the ticking clock. Now you might go, huh? But there are 12 steps or 12 points on the clock. If you're waiting for 12, it's the doomsday clock. It's too late. You've got to get going. And the ticking clock is there to guide traditional companies to transform to successfully be digitally driven. First of all, the usual roadblocks. So I highlight to you the mistakes that other companies make, not yours, other companies, so that you can avoid them. The second part that I also explain in every chapter in part 2 is the usual suspects. What are the warning signs you need to be aware of as you implement and do it right in a digital world? And then the third part is the unusual practices. Now, what does that mean? Well, what is it that the top performing companies and leaders do right that the others are not doing? That's what we call the unusual practices. And you're going to find each one of those in every chapter in part 2 to help you guide your organization to delivering world-class implementation. Well, first of all, let's consider what's been the problem. Your CEO calls you up and invites you to be part of the strategy development team. It's like, it's a good feeling. A few months later, you get the call saying, we want you to be part of the implementation team. It's like, huh? What did I do wrong? This is a perception issue we have. It's almost as if strategy is seen as the good, implementation not quite so good. So this is the first challenge. We have to understand that customers don't notice your strategy, but the implementation. And we need an equal balance between the two. Secondly, we've got to ensure that leaders continue to follow through. It's not a question of launching your strategy in the town hall meeting and then going, okay, you go and implement. As soon as you turn your back on the implementation, so do your employees. So you have to follow through. Now, this has got easier to do than ever before. Using technology, making it simple. We're not talking about a 1-hour meeting. Follow through is you ask your employee to take the right actions, and then you say to them, next Tuesday at 10 a.m., I'm going to come over and speak to you for 10 minutes or dial in and have a virtual call with you for 10 minutes to check how you're doing, what support I can provide. Are there any roadblocks I can assist you in overcoming? So you're talking to them in moving forward, not reviewing their performance. And this is how we can ensure that we start to get that discipline of having both strategy and implementation as equals. There are a couple of key things that are missing. One is the tools, the tips, and the techniques. So in Implement, doing it right in a digital world, you'll find over 70 of these. This is actually my 8th book on implementation, and I bring them all together for you. The second critical thing is that we now need to leverage technology to implement smarter. So in the book, we address how do you solve the last mile of implementation. Now, what is the last mile? It's getting employees to change their behaviors. And I introduce a tool called digital nudges, which are fueled by AI. Well, just like you get a nudge on your phone or your Fitbit that says you haven't walked enough or you haven't slept enough, that's just information. What we do with digital nudges is aligning it with the company's direction. We identify a message that goes out to an employee where N equals 1, so hyper customization. And what that message does, it gives them a choice that resonates with them at the right time. Doesn't tell them what to do. It says, for example, should you call a meeting or should you just take 5 minutes and walk over and check in with the person who you want to speak to? And when people have a choice, they are 5 times more likely to take the right action. And using the reinforcement learning model, it allows us to keep customizing so that the nudges become more relevant and resonate with you more and more. Two examples of companies who have implemented successfully by doing it right in the digital world that I mentioned in the book. The first is the German company Bosch operating in China. In 2020, their business was threatened by digital natives who are going to move into their field. And the leader for Asia Pacific had to, during the pandemic and lockdown, transform from traditional to digital. Now, 2/3 of companies who attempt this fail. To start it while you're in lockdown, you can imagine was even tougher. And yet, within 3 years, they succeeded. And inside the book, Implement, doing it right in a digital world, you'll find the story. The second company that I highlight is from the CEO who was kind enough to write the foreword for the book, Piyush Gupta, CEO of DBS Bank. DBS transformed in 4 years from being a very local traditional bank to the world's best bank for 5 years in a row. So they didn't just become digital, but they revolutionized banking and have become one of the gold standards, if not the gold standard of banking around the world. And I share how they transformed by using many of the tools. And Piyush says himself in the quote for the book that many of the ideas in the book echoed how DBS transformed. If the last mile of implementation is changing employee behavior, one of them is using the AI-fueled tool digital nudges that I mentioned in the book. But another way is by changing the environment around your employees. What does that mean? Well, just think for a second. For those of you who studied overseas, did you change your behaviors to assimilate into that country? Or when you changed jobs, did you adjust your behavior to assimilate into the new company? Environment is a very powerful tool to change employees' behaviors. Now, we're rapidly moving towards agility at scale as one of the most popular ways for organizations to structure themselves. And agility at scale requires cooperation, collaboration, and communication among employees. And when they're sitting in isolated offices or silos, it goes against what they should be doing. So we have to create an environment, an open space that encourages these behaviors. And a second quick part to it is finding that right balance between working from home and working from the office. Post-pandemic, there's been many views on it, and the guiding rule of thumb seems to be 60% in the office, 40% at home. So 3 days in the office, 2 days at home for most people. And that seems to give the right balance for the right environment as well. But to change people's behaviors, think about, are they working in the right environment that encourages the behavior and actions that you want to see? Without employee engagement, your implementation will fail. So the first critical question that many employees ask when they hear the launch of the new corporate-wide strategy is, what's in it for me? Once that has been answered, then you have to explain what's expected from me. So once you've inspired me to participate in the new strategy, what have I to do? Critical third question that needs to be answered, especially as we move into a digital world, is, am I going to lose my job? And the rubric to follow is that people are sacred, jobs are not. And that smart companies reskill and re-engage their employees by recognizing they're already part of the culture and the organization. And this is what it takes to ensure that your employees start to come along. But at the same time, you must also articulate what the right actions are and then give them a choice. Let them choose what they want to do. Because when they do, they are 5 times more encouraged and inspired to take the right actions. And when you bring all of that together, you'll start to move towards higher engaged employees. When you're thinking about your implementation, don't wait until you finish the strategy planning. A good strategy means it can be implemented well. And the implementation plan is part of your strategy planning. And when those two come together, you're then prepared and ready to roll it out beyond the usual fanfare and emails, social media messages, and you're ready with a structured approach to guide your organization to where you want to take it. So implementation planning is part of your strategy, which is what makes a good strategy. Your implementation cannot fail. And implementation, doing it right in a digital world, I've written as hopefully you will find as your definitive playbook to guide your organization to delivering world-class implementation.